Hello my friends, this is Jeffrey Cranford with Links Players International, and get a chance to come to you again via video on your Daily Devo today. So I wanted to talk to you. Actually, we had a group that met this morning here in La Quinta, California, and we're in the process of kind of going verse by verse through 2 Corinthians chapters 8 and 9, which are kind of the place where Paul really gets into the issue of giving. You know, he who sows sparingly will reap sparingly. And in today's culture, especially with TV saturation and media and everything else, and a lot of times when you turn on Christian television, you see almost to an extreme always the issue of giving, always the issue of sowing and reaping and all those kinds of things. And it's really imbalanced. God certainly talks about generosity and giving, but those are some of the things we were talking about this morning. So I thought I'd like to get together and talk about something that came out of that, an idea that came out of that. And that is the fact that money really never satisfies. In fact, recently, and it was a well-publicized study with some longevity to it, out of Princeton, I believe, they came to the point of at what point is someone reach happiness? At what point, at how much money do you have to make to actually derive happiness? And they came up with a figure of $75,000. Now, I'm sure that's slightly different for if you're living in New York or living in Oklahoma somewhere, but the fact is about $75,000, there was an increasing level of happiness up to around $75,000. I think another study's been done recently around 50. So let's say between $50,000 and $75,000, which is essentially meeting your basic needs. You're able to eat, you've got a roof over your head, your basic necessities in life are taken care of, and so there's not a panic about meeting your obligations. But above $75,000, which was so fascinating, it was so small as to be negligible. Any increase in happiness above $75,000, $200,000, $300,000, $500,000, $1 million a year, or even whether or not you're a billionaire, it was no statistical significance above around $75,000. Now, I find that interesting, and I find that a lot of people say, yeah, money doesn't make you happy, and yet we live in a culture saturated by just one more pair of shoes, just one more shirt. If I just had one more shirt, if I had one more house, if I had a little nicer car, if I had a little bit more money in the bank, then I'd be happy. So there's a sense in which we have this idea, certainly as if you're a follower of Jesus, that we know through Scripture that money really doesn't make us happy, and Jesus was giving us an insight into that when he says, just give it away and don't worry about it. Your Father knows you have need of these things and not to worry about it. And yet our daily internal battle with, you know, I know if I just a little more secure, if I had just a little bit more, then I'd be happy, and we recognize that people never really get that because you continue to increase. Now let me read something for you here. Of course, I love Ecclesiastes. It's kind of the definitive final word on what it is like to seek the world from just a worldly perspective. And listen to what he says. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves abundance with its income. This too is vanity. So intellectually and conceptually, I recognize money never satisfied. We all know people who have extraordinary amounts of wealth who are not satisfied. So we kind of intuitively, or at least theologically, realize that, and we talk about that. And yet, at the same time, deep down, it's not in my blood. Deep down, I really believe that if I had a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, then I'd be satisfied. And the Bible's very clear. Money does not satisfy. It does not. Basic needs, yes, but above that, it does not. And listen to the reason. Here's the next verse. Check this out. It says, when good things increase, those who consume them increase. So what's the advantage of their owners except just to look upon it? So at a certain point, and this is the truth I wanted to really talk to you about, happiness, contentment is relative. Whether or not you're happy about that or not, it's always going to be the case. If you've got a guy that's never been on a vacation, I don't care if he's staying at the Motel 6 and eating at Denny's and has no other, I mean those, you know, that Motel 6 where you can see through the towel and all that kind of stuff, and it's almost disposable towels. The bed's not very supportive. That guy, though, is on a vacation, got an opportunity to go out and do a little nature walk and maybe saw a movie with his wife. And that was one of the greatest vacations he's experienced ever, because he really has never been on vacation. Didn't have to work. His relative level of contentment or happiness at that moment is off the charts. Now let's take another scenario, and you take a very wealthy couple who's used to 5-star treatment absolutely across the board. They go and they decide to take a week, and they go to somewhere in the Mediterranean. They go to a 5-star resort, and for whatever reason they have a 4-star experience. Their entire trip, they are miserable, absolutely miserable, because they're not getting what they paid for. This isn't bad, and the mosquitoes, and this isn't right, and they see everything that's going wrong, and their bed's not right, and they didn't get their chocolates at night with their bed covers turned down, and it just wasn't what they had expected. Their relative happiness is so low. I think this is exactly what Solomon's trying to get across here. He's saying it doesn't matter at what level you are, as you increase your ability and your finances, your expectations increase. You increase. And so your relative happiness is no better off than were you before, as long as you are slightly better than your expectations, or you're meeting your expectations. And then you derive a certain level of contentment. And that's a sad fact. And yet, most of us don't have that in our blood. Just one more will make us happy. And we can sit down and talk about it, but recognize that, in fact, it's never going to satisfy us. So one of the things I think that Jesus did when he talked to people about giving their things away, maybe he had a much deeper insight than we would have ever thought. I think sometimes we come to the New Testament and think of it legalistically, like, I've got to give, I've got to do all these sacrificial things, and once I meet my obligations to God, then I can get back to my true happiness, which is being derived with my income, or my new house, or my new vacation, or my new trip. Maybe Jesus had a very deep insight, as that when we give not just our finances, but when we give our life away for the betterment of someone else, if we sow sparingly, we reap sparingly. If we sow generously, if we give away friendship, what are we going to get? We're going to get friendship back. If we give away our time, what are we going to get back? We're going to find that we have time. Certain things will move away that we thought were instrumental or significant in our lives, and we'll recognize them with the luxury of retrospect as not having been that significant after all. Maybe Jesus had a deep and profound insight into contentment, and it was as we give our lives away, we actually find our lives. We find the very things that we were always seeking by one more shirt, one more perfect scenario for our lives, which was actually dragging us down a road of self-deception and self-absorption that forced us into a place of real and true lasting unhappiness. Now, the Bible's not only about happiness, it's ultimately about joy, and happiness kind of comes and goes. But joy is abiding, and joy is found in the presence of the Lord. And I will tell you, as you move deeper, more deeply into your calling, there will be places of sacrifice and giving, but I can promise you, it will always pay much greater dividends than anything you gave out. I think it's been the experience of not only me personally and our ministry, but millions of missionaries around the world, or whether they're actually consider themselves missionaries or not, or guys that have given themselves away at their own country club for the betterment of others, their time, their resources, just their listening ear. And it's an amazing insight. So I hope this helped. Again, it gets back into our little our continued talk about calling. And one of the great hurdles, again, to calling is the sense that, well, yeah, you are going to have to give up some things, but it's always going to bring ultimately true desire. Because as Ecclesiastes so clearly says, he who loves money will not be satisfied, but I promise you, he who loves the Lord and finds his will always find deep satisfaction. Hope you have a great day.